Jonathan Reynolds, shall we? Who would want to win the next election?
Well, we would. I've been on the other side of these autumn statements and budgets, and I'd like the chance to do one. And look, yes, I mean, we knew already going into this, working people aren't better off after 13 years of Conservative government. Now we know that's not going to change. There's no big story in the government's plans. I mean, an autumn statement for growth down next year after that. Headlines on taxation, but there's no doubt taxes will be higher at the next election than they were at the previous one, and living standards down. But, you know, I am optimistic because if you look at, say, business investment, which is a subject today, or the growth of the economy, they were much stronger under the last Labour government. I think if you put a strong economy, good public services, social justice together, that is the right formula. And I do believe, certainly for business and economic growth and business investment, we have a far better set of policies in the Labour Party than anything that we saw today.
If you look at some of these spending projections going ahead for a few years, you know, post the next election, you might think that this is effectively like a scorched earth policy for Labour. You're not going to have much money to spend. Public services already have what many people, including Paul Johnson of the IFS, told me today was a completely unrealistic set of projections. You'll end up having to spend much more on them than is currently ticketed for it. So you're going to have to make some difficult decisions, aren't you, right?
Well, look,
what are the difficult decisions you're
first of all,
make?
let's not be complacent about the next election. No one on the Labour side is. It's still a very competitive election and we've got to do what needs to be done, and very few parties do get the chance to come from a defeat like we had in 2019 to win an election, so we're humble about that and doing it.
If you do...
But look, you're right, this would be a terrible inheritance. But I would say if you look at Labour's policies, they do relate to each other. So, for instance, that policy to put more money into the NHS by scrapping the non-dom regime for the super rich.
How much is the non-dom? How much is that going to bring?
It would bring in £2.3 billion.
£2.3 billion. I mean, I know that sounds a lot.
But just let me, on the point, you see, that brings down some of the people
£20 billion have been taken out today.
I know, but
that's going to have a lot of non-dom taxes
that takes out, that puts people back into the economy, into the labour market, who are currently signed off long-term sick. That's one of the big barriers. It's one of the big problems we've got in the economy. That then relates to more workers. That helps with economic growth. These policies link together. If you look at the support for mental health that we put forward, which would come from the changes to taxation for private education, again, mental health, a major reason why people are being signed off work in such large numbers. We haven't got a participation rate in the economy that's even gone back to the pre-pandemic level. We're a real outlier there. If you look at our plans for, you know, the jobs of the future, the Green Prosperity Plan, industrial strategy, that's about the economy growing faster. I am not saying it would be easy, and if you look at, frankly, the mess of the last 13 years, I know it would daunt some people, but we are really confident in what we are developing and putting together, and we do believe it would be far superior to anything we've seen so far from the government.
Would you keep the cut to national insurance? Do you think that's a good move?
Well, we did oppose the rise to national insurance, if you remember that back to who was the Prime Minister? Boris Johnson, I think, at that point. It's quite hard to keep track. Yes, because we believe taxes on working people are too high, and that's because growth has been too low. But let's be clear about this. If you look at the rise in taxation under this government in this parliament, it's equivalent to about 10 pence extra onto national insurance. It's gone up 10 pence, it's coming down 2 pence. It's still a big rise. People are not going to be looking at this thinking, you know, great times, good times here. And we all welcome inflation coming down. That's, I would say, global factors, not the government's own activity and actions. But, you know, the cost of living crisis, food inflation in particular, is still really hard for people. It was almost like watching someone who was Chancellor for a different country make some of that statement today, and I think people will be frustrated by that.
You're pretty clear that you think the tax burden's too high, taxes on working people are too high. But I guess my question is, do you need to level with people that if you really believe that, if Labour's not going to put up taxes, as the Conservatives claim, then public services are going to be squeezed, really squeezed, if you win the next election?
Well, I would actually say it's slightly different to that, because I would say if economic growth is not higher than it has been for the last 13 years, I mean, it's been below the historic trend rate of growth in the UK economy.
Look, maybe it's because I'm not on a... I'm just getting a bit bamboozled here. You know, my question is, do you not need to level with people that if you're not going to put up taxes, then public spending would be squeezed if you win the election?
The other variable is how fast the economy grows. And if it grows as it has done for the last 13 years, any decision will be hard. Public spending, taxation, it will all get worse. I mean, people need to understand just how poorly, by historic levels, things have been under this Conservative government.
The growth projections, including after the next election, is basically flatlining. So you're not going to have, like,
on the trajectory of this
growth that you can get the proceeds of. You're not Gordon Brown.
The idea we couldn't grow higher than 2%, which is what we would broadly expect the British economy to do. let's not get into this fatalistic trap that we have to only perform as badly as we have done under the Conservative Party. Of course, there's a better future ahead, but if growth is low, taxes go up, and you don't get good public services for that, you get poor public services. If the economy is growing more strongly, and that requires proper industrial strategy, government investment, our Green Prosperity Plan, getting Britain building, planning reform, really tame stuff from the Chancellor today. We're going to be far bolder than that. Reform of the apprenticeship levy, making Brexit work better, more power for mayors. These are the things that would really move the dial. But whatever, if that doesn't happen, it's always going to be about spending cuts and higher taxes, and I don't think we should put up with that.
It's great. It's what everyone wants. It's that elusive magic thing that everyone wants
It's not magic, it's good policy, and we haven't had good policy for a long time.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Jonathan Reynolds, Shadow Business Secretary.